We are going to start a new little segment we've got going. It's going to be in between our sort of hard and tough wheeling. I'm just thinking of something sort of to break it up a bit more. I've thrown myself into the deep end with the sort of level of build that I've done and the wheeling I'm trying to push myself to do, but it's what I've enjoyed. So I'm hoping to give back to you guys, and what we're going to call this series or episodes is Beginner's Basics. Hopefully you can learn a thing or two about what you should or shouldn't do to your four-wheel drives. So this one, we're going to go with the age-old question of lifting your four-wheel drive and how big you should go. We're going to start with the two main types of four-wheel drives you can buy. Modern-day four-wheel drives are generally an IFS vehicle, which is an independent front suspension, and then generally a lot of your older four-wheel drives are a solid axle. The difference between the two is a solid axle will be passenger and driver's wheel will be connected by one solid unit from side to side, and IFS are independent. So this one can move and this one will stay completely still, vice versa. Before even considering or buying a lift kit for your car, what you need to do is get out there and use your car. And when you use it, you need to put all your accessories on that you're gonna have. Bull bar, winch, UHF, tray, canopy, rear drawers, fridge, anything you need to do all of that before you even consider putting a lift kit in it. Lift kits will actually depend on what sort of weight you have in your car. If you go and put, argument's sake, 500 kilo constant weight springs in the rear of your car and you've only got 100 kilos, it's gonna ride horrible on and off road. First rule, get out and use your car. Use it to work out exactly what you enjoy, the type of terrain, and the type of wheeling you enjoy, because that's going to actually put a huge idea in your head on the kind of lift kit you need for your car. Now we will start with the standard sized lift kit for your car. Generally throughout Australia, the legal limit in majority of the states is 2 inches. 2 inches or 50 mil. A lot of people get the idea that lifting your four-wheel drive 5 inches gives me more ground clearance and then I can drive anywhere because my car is massive and huge. You're wrong. In order to get more ground clearance from your diffs, which are your lowest hanging parts, or the bash plates on your IFS vehicle, you need bigger tires. Lifting your car is only going to give you more chassis clearance off the ground. Your diffs and everything else stay at the same rate. So your diffs are going to be down here, and if you lift your car, what it's going to do is just go like this. Your diffs stay there. When you lift your wheels, your diffs come up with it. If you had no lift and you went and put a 35-inch tire on your car, your up travel is going to be so much shorter because that 35 is going to be so much closer to the guard, and it's just going to smack straight into the guard before you even get your suspension articulating. So pros and cons behind IFS vehicles. IFS vehicles being your modern day vehicles, you've got a lot of tech running through them, a lot of safety running through them. Generally, you can get pretty good clearance out of an IFS vehicle. They are the perfect touring vehicle around Australia for comfort. On-road manners is going to be phenomenal compared to a solid axle. On-road manners are going to be so good for the simple fact that's what they're designed for. With an IFS vehicle, lifting it above 2 inch, in my eyes, is going extreme. The reason a lot of kits for IFS vehicles are 2 inch is because you're putting your drive line on extremes amounts of pressure. You can go and put a 4 or a 5 inch lift kit in your IFS vehicle, but you're gonna have a lot of dramas with wear and tear. Your CVs in the front end are gonna last, let's say 15,000 Ks, and you go hit a track, they're generally probably gonna explode. So from factory, let's just go with IFS CV is at this level. It's nice and level. It's under no strain. It's perfect. You lift it 2 inches. You're going to think it's going 2 inches here, so 50 mil, and down here, it's stayed the same. The center of your axle is staying the same. So you've now put a 50 mil line down onto itself over 300 mil, argument's sake. You got to think about the strain. Let's go to 4 inch. That's 100 mil. Those joints now are starting to bind against each other so much more. You go and take that off road, you're gonna probably more than likely blow something to smithereens. In order to fix your IFS vehicle and make it less strain on the drive line, the higher you go, you need to drop your center diff housing. So your front CVs will go from your axle here to your 50 mil lift here, and if you go and drop your diff 50 mil, it brings it back down to factory. And when you're at your factory level, there is way less strain on those CVs. That again is a massive expense you're going to have to think about down the line if you want to start lifting it crazy. It gives you just enough size to go and add 33s to your car and give you a huge improvement off-road. You've also got to consider on-road abilities. 33s is going to start to affect your fuel economy. It's going to affect your speedo. It's going to affect how your car handles on the road. The bigger your tires go, the more you'll start to get a little bit more different steering wheel walk. IFS is perfect for that because it's not going to walk as hard as what a solid axle will do. My optimal lift for an IFS vehicle is 2-inch and 33-inch tires. Generally speaking, when you put a 2-inch lift in an IFS vehicle, you're only going to be changing the basics. You'll be changing your coilovers in the front. You may need to extend your sway bar links. In the rear, you're going to be changing your coils or leaf springs, depending on your car, sway bar links in the rear, shocks as well to suit the lift that you're putting in. With lifting your four-wheel drive, other things to consider that a lot of people don't sort of think about is your center of gravity. So if I put a 2-inch lift kit in my car, you've got to think the center of gravity. Let's just go with the center of gravity of your car is the seat level of where you sit down. So where you sit in your car, that is the center of gravity. That's the perfect weight above and the perfect weight below. If you lift that center of gravity 2 inches, you're gonna start to feel more roll. As soon as you hit a 5-6 inch lift, let's go with a 6-inch lift, you're going to be then 150 mil higher of center of gravity. In some cases, a car may roll on that, and then the next car that's identical to it on a 3-inch lift won't roll because your center of gravities are different. Center of gravity will also give you different on-road abilities. You're gonna get more body roll going into corners. It's gonna feel less comfy. You're gonna have to go slower around a roundabout or into a corner because you don't feel as comfortable in your car now that they're so tall. Let's get into solid axle vehicles. Now, there is a reason solid axle vehicles are generally used for your tougher, more technical wheeling off-road. We'll go on to lifting a solid axle vehicle. It can vary as much as you want and how far you want to get into it, but we'll get to the basics here on lifting it, what my optimal lift is, and why. With a solid axle vehicle, on-road abilities are going to be not as good as what an IFS is. Solid axle, however, will handle way better off-road and will articulate and take less strain on the driveline because of the way they've designed. If I was to lift a solid axle vehicle and lift an IFS vehicle, like I was explaining before, an IFS vehicle, as soon as you lift it, puts strain on that CV. Solid axle vehicle doesn't do that. In the front diff, that CV will stay completely straight. It's only on strain when you're turning. Lifting it as much as you want, it will not affect the CV. It's not going to put any additional strain onto your axles. What's going to affect that is tire size, and that is another subject to touch on completely. As I was saying before, lifting your vehicle only gains you clearance to the chassis of your vehicle and not diff clearance. Most of the time, you're lifting your vehicle to fit bigger tires under your car, which then gives you diff clearance. So then you can tackle bigger and harder obstacles. Touching back on the center of gravity, keeping your car as low as you can. A saying I like to go with is low and wide, and the lower you can keep that center of gravity, the better. So with that sort of situation, I don't run a roof rack or anything on my roof because I want to keep more weight down to the bottom of my car rather than the top of my car. So lifting your solid axle vehicles 2 inches, which is your legal lift kit pretty much around Australia. Things you're going to need to do with that, same as an IFS vehicle, for a solid axle, you're going to be changing just your basic end of things and get away with running those standard factory arms and factory panhards. You can get away with running those. Optimal to change them, but it also depends on your budget. Now, if I own an IFS vehicle and I'm just doing beach runs and hanging out with my mates on the weekend, down camping by the river, or I'm just touring Australia and I've got a canopy and a rooftop tent, a 2-inch lift kit is perfect for you guys. That's all you're sort of gonna wanna run. And if you want to start to get into your hard technical wheeling, you're gonna have to start pushing into the solid axle world. Now, my optimal lift kit for a solid axle vehicle, depending on what you're driving, you guys need to use your car to understand exactly what you need your car for. Same scenario as if I am driving an IFS vehicle. My solid axle vehicle, if I was just touring with a rooftop tent, heading down to the beach and just camping to have fun, would be 2-inch and 33s. I wouldn't go any further than that. You don't need to push the legal limits if you're not going to be doing anything you need that lift for. Now, if you're going into your hard technical wheeling end of things and you have a solid axle vehicle, my personal preference would be no bigger than a 4-inch lift. But in saying that, it all depends on your tire size. I run 4-inch on 37s. If I go back to 35s, I'm contemplating going back to a 3 or a 2-inch lift because I can still fit them. And then it gets my center of gravity down lower. There's a lot of things you got to start to consider when you start to put your car on some pretty gnarly leans and rolling into corners and on-road manners. When lifting your vehicle, it's going to improve your approach and departure angles. You've also got to weigh up your approach and your departure angles depending on your center of gravity. You don't want a 6-inch lift with a rooftop 10 on top just to get a better approach and a departure angle, but you're closer to rolling as it is, and you're also pretty much maxing out your shock length before you've even got your suspension to travel. Now, budget-wise on this whole scenario, going through and wheeling how I've wheeled for the last 2 years, hard wheeling and then touring prior to that, is spending your money on more expensive lift kits actually worth it? Yes, to an extent. Your biggest factor actually comes down to your shocks. Your shocks, if you get some shocks, you can get them tuned by people to suit your car and weight, because when they make them, they actually think they're a generic sort of weight through every car. This is the rough average. Your car might be on the higher end of the spectrum or the lower end. So getting your shocks tuned will actually make the ride of your car better. If you also go to the higher end brands of shocks, they're going to perform better on and off road for your car. Coils and leaf springs, you're generally going to be much sort of between them. The comfort in your ride is generally going to come down to how your shock absorbers are handling. Your sway bars as well, because that's going to handle your body roll on and off road. You may need to extend them when you extend your lift kit. You got to think, when you start with factory, they've got it at the perfect ride height, and you go and lift your car 2 inches, you got to think your sway bar is now 2 inches out of where factory comfort level was. And they've done extensive testing to their cars to work out exactly where that perfect level is. So if you extend your lift kit, you're probably going to want to extend your sway bars as well. Another thing to consider, the higher you go in your lift, the more expensive it's going to become, because the more components on your car you're going to be affecting. Some have bigger tolerances than what others do, but you do need to keep in mind the higher and higher you go, the more things you're going to need to fix, and potentially the more stress certain things are going to put on certain joints. Keeping it as low as possible is the smartest thing you'll be able to do for your four-wheel drive on and off road. It's going to feel more comfortable and safer when you do hit the tracks. Make sure you do your research into the brand of suspension you're going to buy. Superior and Mike, I find, at the higher end. EFS and Fulcrum suspension are your entry levels. They will get the job done, but not as comfortable as the rest. Now guys, I hope you've enjoyed this first video of beginners basics. This is an idea I had in my head, and I'm just trying to shed knowledge onto you guys that I've looked into. I can get a lot more complicated than this, or I could leave it as beginners, and later on when I want to rekindle on certain subjects, I can go real depth and really into the advanced side of it, because there is a lot more out there. I hope you have enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.